All right, and here she is. For the most part, it's pretty much prepped up. The only thing that I haven't done yet is this door, but I did the door jamb areas. I lifted up the windows, and I actually found a little bit of rust on the top part over here, so I will have a future video repairing that, as well as taking care of a little bit of rust, just surface rust in the trunk. You will notice that my body kit is taken off of the car. I did remove it so I could fix a couple of imperfections like little pinholes and some minor areas that needed some fiberglass work. Got all that stuff squared away. All right, so these are all the supplies that I use when prepping my car for paint. Starting off with the cleaners, I normally wipe everything down with some glass cleaner, followed by a wipe down with some alcohol. Last but not least, I'll wipe it down with some wax and grease remover. This pretty much ensures that the surface is nice and clean and I don't have anything that's going to contaminate while I'm sanding. Once everything has been cleaned up properly, I will block as much as possible where possible. General rule of thumb is to use the largest size block you can for the panel that you're working on. So you'll see I have a large one, medium, and some small handheld ones, even to some small little tiny ones that I got creative with. As long as it's nice and flat, you can use it as a block. For some of the harder to reach areas, such as jams and some tough little corners, I'll use a Burgundy scotch brite pad. This stuff works really well for those hard to get areas. A couple different types of sandpaper. I have an adhesive back sandpaper that I use for the blocks, and I have circular sandpaper that I use for the DA. General rule of thumb here is after you block, you run the DA over it. You tend to get better results having the finishing with the DA. If you are sanding panels at a time, it's good to use some blue tape to kind of section things off. That way you're sanding where you want to sand and you don't sand where you don't want to sand. Last but not least is the PPE. We have natural oils and stuff in our hands, so it's always good to protect your hands, as our natural oils don't really get along with paint either, and it's always a good idea to protect your lungs. So you can see I was kind of block sanding in an X cross pattern here. And right away we can already see some spots that we are low. Kind of the reason why I'm also putting another coat of primer. I'm gonna use some epoxy primer as well as some high build primer on top of the epoxy primer. And then I'm gonna do this all over again so it can sand it all down, block it out, and get it nice and flat. All right, so pretty much got the mid section of this door blocked out. And what do you see? We got some more low spots right next to some high spots. So that's a wave, you know, so nothing to be worried about. That's why we're doing this, and we're gonna apply more primer. So gonna finish it off and do this bottom portion. All right guys, and there you have it. This door is blocked out as best as it can be. One thing worth mentioning, when you are blocking it out, don't put too much pressure just in one spot. Kind of let the block and the sandpaper do the job. Try to keep that pressure and the weight distributed evenly on the block, so that way you can get a nice flat panel. So this is where the tape comes into play. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tape off the fender portion since that's already been sanded. This bottom kind of skirt portion, as well as the edge of where that quarter panel is, because I don't wanna sand that stuff. I just wanna sand the door with the DA. All right, so I'm all finished prepping this door. This is the same process that I did for the entire car, the fenders, the roof, the door jambs. I even took this quarter panel off and all that is sanded underneath there as well. List goes on, trunk, literally every single spot. So here is the original paint setup that I used to paint my 240SX with that DTM primer. I was able to get by with a small 21-gallon compressor, some PVC pipes, and I built these little water traps. And probably the most expensive part of this was the Devil Biss air filter dryer, which was super awesome. From there, it hooked up to the gun, one which I used a HVLP Eastwood Concours gun. This gun is really nice because it requires just very low CFM to produce some good results, which is why I was able to get by with such a tiny compressor. For some added security, I did use a digital gauge and another filter at the gun just so I could dial in the PSI to match the CFM that's required by this thing. So this thing worked really good on that first coat, but since I'm not going to be using the system this time around, I'm switching to aerosol, but not just any aerosol. I'm using some 2K aerosol. This is a two-part system here, so this is supposed to be just as good as the stuff that comes out of this gun. So read a lot of reviews, a lot of good reviews, so I'm gonna go with this time around. First, I'm gonna spray some 2K Epoxy Primer down and get everything nice and coated again, especially all those spots that burn through. And then I'm going to apply some high build urethane primer on top of the epoxy primer. That way I could really build up that surface and give me some good room to block stuff down with. This is what I'm gonna use to make the paint booth. So this is just some drop cloth and a heavy duty stapler. Okay, quick little update on the car. I did remove the fender. The reason why I removed the fender is when it just mounted up, it covers this little portion right here, and I wanna make sure that this gets coated as well. I did mask off the side windows. Windshield is actually cracked, hard to see, but this guy is coming out and going in the trash, so that'll be fully masked off properly. I did remove the trunk and masked off the hinges. The reason why I took off the trunk is because I'm going to be coating the inside of this bottom portion as well as this whole rear window area, and these little rain rails, gutters, whatever you call them, this is all going to get coated with something else. I did do the Pour 15 rust stop kit on the bottom where there was some rust, and as well as this window area where there was some rust. And on top of this rust stop kit, I'm gonna use this Pour 15 top coat. So this is what I'm gonna use for this trunk area, for all of these areas, and all the way around the window on the back side. So I'm gonna use this. Everything else is gonna use that 2K aerosol from Eastwood that I showed you guys earlier. Car is prepped up, everything is sanded, everything is nice and smooth, this whole back area, everything is good to go. So now we're officially gonna start the cleaning process. So I got the rest of the car masked up and ready to go. I took care of the trunk area, the rear window area, both of the side windows, the wheel wells, covered up the side markers. There's a bunch of little holes all back here that we're also taking care of. When I go to do my jams, the inner portion of the door here is also all masked off, both sides. And I was able to knock out the paint booth. So I have a fan that's pretty much drawing out all of the air that's in here, and I have a filter that is bringing in nice clean air. But I got most of the walls done, I got this side done, I got the back done, and I got this side. I just left this portion open right here. That's currently how I'm coming in and out. But here in a little bit, I am going to also tape off this fan with another filter on top of it. That way I got good airflow going on both sides of the car. The only thing that I have in here with booth with me is pretty much my cleaning supplies. So I am gonna wipe everything down off one more time, starting with the glass cleaner, then the wax and grease remover, and then alcohol. So 3 steps there, and then free towels that I'm gonna throw in this trash bag when I'm done. This is all the paint that I'm using, and the tack cloth that I'm wipe everything down with. I do have a mask and some other PPE, but that is not inside of the paint booth right now. So I'm gonna give the car a wipe down, and then we'll be ready to go. All right, so we are ready to get painted. I got the other side of the garage taken care of, got the mask and coveralls on. I'm not gonna record while I spray because there's gonna be a lot of particles and stuff in the air. So the next time you see this car, it is gonna be primered up. I'm excited.